Hello and welcome. It's me, Percita, and this is Percita's Paradox. Thank you so much for joining me. I greatly appreciate you as always. If you're new to this channel, thank you for joining me today. And if you are returning, an OG of mine, the love of my YouTube life, thank you so much for joining me today. So I wanted to get on today and actually one, see how you were doing because of course this is our new meeting time and date in the week. And also just to describe what I think is something that is really taking over the internet. I think it's been going on for, if I really had to give it a time frame, it's really been happening within the last 15, 20 years. But today I just really want to discuss it specifically in a manner that I think we could all really utilize and bring forth some knowledge and some dialogue about it. And what that is self-sabotaging. And you may say, well, what are you going to tell me different about self-sabotaging? Maybe nothing. But what I want to bring you is a different perspective in regards to how you can beat self-sabotage. So the question today is, are you self-sabotaging yourself? And I mean that in a manner of anything, because typically we talk about, more of an environment. Sometimes we talk about it from a relational place, but truthfully, self-sabotage to me really begins and ends in self. That's why the word says self-sabotage. And the biggest proponent of what that means to ourselves is that we really don't progress. We don't grow. We don't see ourselves the way we need to be seen in order to walk in our purpose, in order to be a part of society as the greatness that we are, in order to see your worth, in order to be able to actually acquire the things that you want, both tangibly and spiritually. You just don't get anything that you are deserving and anything that is already in alignment to what God has already said you were going to have, period. So when you think of self-sabotage, we typically try to then balance it off of our responses to other things and other people. But today, I want to take an angle that's a little bit different. I want to actually start within you and really focus on the you part of it, because that is really, I think, the root of what's going to help people really understand like what it means in their life and how it comes about and how you can actually combat it and actually cope with it in a much better way. Getting over it completely is completely up to the task and the diligence within yourself, but I definitely feel as if it can be conquered. So today, here we go. The first thing that you really want to discuss with yourself, because these are all conversations you must have with yourself. You really have to ask yourself, do you believe in you? That's the key. If you don't believe in you, then everything that I'm going to say from this point forward won't make any sense to you, because everything that I'm saying is based on your belief of yourself, your idea of what you are, whose you are, and what your purpose in life is. And if none of those things are aligned on the side of you, on the angle of it's important for you to achieve it, then none of it's going to work, right? So we typically have an idea of putting ourselves in atmospheres and relationships and saying that we self-sabotage ourselves because we make whatever is good in our life be bad because we don't feel like we deserve it. That is absolutely true. But I'll also tell you that to start in the entire scenario, you'd have to know that you didn't believe that you were supposed to be there, right? And then you'd have to almost believe that it's not going to last, which is typically why self-sabotaging is so crazy, because it's not necessarily that you don't believe that you deserve it. Most don't believe that they even have a position of being there or that it's going to last. And then that proponent of your thought makes you then completely walk away or never really, experience it or take out the idea that you would be able to initiate it or anything of the sort, because it's all in you, your worth, the ideas you have of yourself. When you think of those things, you must understand that they come from the foundation of where you come from, how you've been spoken to, what you've been told to believe about yourself. Typically, it's based on what others have told you who you are to be. That is always going to be a sad scenario, because if you think we're saying self-sabotage, then why in the frickety frat would environment, right, and core foundational things have anything to do with your sustenance? It's really understanding that you're a product of something. no matter how you want to flip it. So in yourself, there's these pieces that are not of you that have now become the the ingredients of who you are, which causes you to then be what we are going to call self, right? So let's just make it like it's a cake. All of the flour and sugar and vanilla extract and milk and all of those things would be people in your life, typically your family, typically your friends, but for the most part, your family, the first people you fall in love with, your mother, your father, your grandparents, your sisters, your brothers. What these people have told you about yourself is typically what we are structured to believe about ourselves. We don't really find out who we are as self, or sometimes never, but we really don't find out who we are until we actually understand what our purpose or what our self goals are. And I say that because when most people talk about self-sabotaging, they really don't touch that part. It's almost as if they don't understand that you at 20 didn't just manifest at 20, like those 20 years to get to 20 is what then caused you at 20 to self-sabotage. So you want to go back and you want to really ask yourself the question of, what have I been being told about myself? Sometimes you're told you're bossy. Sometimes you've been told things like, well, you're hard-headed. Sometimes you've been told, things of the sort of like, you're slow to learn, or you don't listen, and things like that. We don't recognize typically how much those words really build who we are. So much so that we're just now starting to study child development in a manner that really emphasizes the words that come out of your mouth. I say that because once you understand how many times you've been told so much negative about yourself, even when you're trying to tell yourself things that would be positive to try to offset that, it's complicated to fight it because you're really in a space of only being used to hearing and agreeing with what someone says. I mean, how many times as a child were you maybe perplexed about something and you didn't understand? And instead of someone saying to you, you know what, I understand that you don't understand. Let's try to come to some type of an understanding on how we can make you get to this, knowledge place that I want you to a better understanding than what you're doing right now. Instead, so many of us have heard, well, you're just acting stupid. Or do you think I'm a fool? Or I don't understand what you think I'm doing. I don't have the time to play these games with you. You may not have been playing a game. But do you understand that sometimes those words, even though I do not believe that any of our parents were trying to hurt us with those words, they're just the words that were told to them. And being that be the case, then everyone is kind of reciprocating what they know basically got them to where they are, right? So how many times have you heard that? How many times have you heard someone say, well, I did it. When I was young, we had to do da 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 da. And it's like a sense of comparison on what you should be willing and able to handle against what your parents were. And some of us are still doing it within our own children and children's children. And what I'm saying about that is that you really have to be conscious of the words. In order to combat self-sabotage, you really have to go and change the words that you're used to being defined as your definition of self. And it typically starts from your childhood. It typically starts from the relationships you had there, because most of your reputation as a child comes from what your parents tell people that you are. And in that, you learn to either become what they're saying that you are, or you then combat what that is, and then you're still typically under some type of scrutiny of not fitting whatever profile that your parents had for you. So you can see then why, as you become older, self becomes a strange definition, because it's really a complete redefining of who you are based on what you now have access to from what you used to only have access to. So when I hear people say things like, well, a person is going to walk away from something that's good for them because they don't, in saying that, it's really complicated to find ourselves. I mean, I find it very interesting that we just don't understand how powerful words are and how they permeate within our spirit and how we really are made up of words. So when you think of how to combat self-sabotaging, it really becomes, what are the words that you're speaking over yourself? And you have to know that a lot of the words that you believe that you are were not words that you ever created. They were literally ideas and ideologies of your parents or of your upbringing that then have built you to what you are. So if you did not have a upbringing that was affirmative, meaning it was uplifting and being in a place of telling you the great things that you can do, and of course being able and willing to give you the information about what you needed to change, but always coming back with some sense of love to wrap that around you, to know that the sum total of who you were not your mistakes, can be complicated. So I say that because I don't want people anymore to bash the idea, to skip over that in saying it's just a matter of a person not understanding that they hate themselves. I don't believe that. I do not believe that people hate themselves if they're self-sabotaging. To be truthful, I don't believe that they would understand what the hate would be. I think that the misunderstanding of who they are, because see, that word hate could really be a strong word and be transferred into a different realm of what this conversation is. I believe it's just that. It's a misunderstanding of really comprehending how you really are comprised to be in this world and what your purpose is. We all have a purpose. We all have a role to play. And we all have a decision to make in regards to if it's going to be positive or negative. So sometimes we just have to understand that we are not always given that option. Sometimes when a person is really upset about themselves and then they continue to say negative things about themselves, which then spills over into you or your, like I said, your childhood or things of that nature, then it can become very complicated for you to understand. It's not hatred of yourself, it's a misunderstanding. It's a blurred comprehension of what it is that you're supposed to be. So when something comes in order to uplift you, you reject it because what you're used to hearing is so negative that you don't really believe that you're capable of understanding what it is. It's almost as if to say you've been in a foreign country and you've learned how to speak the language, but you're scared to speak it because you don't think your accent would be proper. You don't believe your dialect would be proper. So you don't say anything because you just feel as if I don't want to stand out and look strange. It's damn near the exact same idea when you think about it from self-sabotaging. So I just have heard the word hate so often, it just drives me a little bonkers because that's not productive to actually say that. It's really more comprehensive and more empathetic to say it in a manner of a misunderstanding, because to tell someone that they hate themselves gives them a complete different spiral out of something that they don't really need to address. But you do need to understand that you want to define yourself. Sometimes even in regards to religion, we've been taught how we're supposed to be based on our religion itself or based on our parentals our parentals angles of how religion would be. I was going to say something different, but that's what I'm going to say. It's not until you get older and actually start to experience things on your own that you start to redefine what religion should look like. And if you're religious, right? I was very, very much so raised in a religious household, and I would tell you that I'm not religious. I had to get very grown to understand that percita is not religious. I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. I don't base my spirituality on any type of orthodox religion in regards to how I'm supposed to move, be, interact with others, or progress. I base my spirituality based on relationship, and that relationship is with who I would consider my higher power. Now, that's not everyone's facet. Some don't feel as if that's the way they want to go, and that's fine. But that journey for me is what allowed me to find myself. I say that because you want to find your path in regards to how you can find yourself in order to not sabotage yourself and what's to come for you or what's in place of what you need in your life and who you need in your life because you're ready to receive them. It equates to saying you want to know how many people are coming to dinner, but you have to know how many people you invited before you can figure out how many people are going to come. Does that make sense? And so many times we just don't take that approach. And because we don't take that approach, it then becomes something that's completely convoluted because we're not willing to just send out a reminder to ask the people that we invited, are you coming or are you not coming? But catch it. If I didn't know who I invited, then I'm just going to constantly be sitting waiting to see whoever and whomever would ever show up to something that I'm just hoping that they understand that I'm having. But how would they know unless I invited them? Kind of understand what I'm saying? You'd have to be in awareness in order to make the self-sabotage drama, so to speak, leave your life. So it's not just about, just to reiterate, it's not just about not being able to receive. That's the end result of self-sabotage. But the beginning result of self-sabotage is more of the internalness of what self really means to you. So even people who are completely aware of who they are can self-sabotage, but you don't hear that very often because typically you only hear about the people who, air quote, hate themselves. I love myself and I'm still capable of self-sabotaging myself based on other things that would be more like overthinking and more in a position of absolutely knowing that I deserve and believe that I deserve to be in a space or have great things or be able to do great things and still be in a space of not understanding or believing if I'm ready for it. Okay? So you have to think about self-sabotage beyond just this negative of only not knowing yourself and understand that there's also the other side, that you're very aware of yourself and you're still capable because no one is absolute. There is not a person on this earth walking, speaking, talking that is absolute. That means perfect. That means understanding all things at all times in every scenario. It's impossible. So self-sabotage can be deeper than just the position of the negative. You can be an A positive and still positively self-sabotage yourself. We call that overthinking. We call that overly prepared or anxious or other nicer words instead of self-sabotaging. But I'm gonna go out on a limb and say they're absolutely synonymous with one another. They're absolutely one and the same. Okay, so I just want you to think about that. I want you to understand that even in the idea of what society tells you things are, try your best to define them for yourself. We use words so often and they really are not even the proper definition of what the word is. But if it fits a metaphoric statement, if it fits a meme, if it fits an idea or an ideology of what someone's trying to say, without doing any research, you would just jump on it. Be like, yeah. I mean, so-and-so said da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I mean, you can absolutely research, I hope you do, things that I say, because I too can give you a spin on something that might not be what you need to hear, or it might not be the definition that is proper, because I'm not perfect. But as I say that, I want you to understand that it is crucial for you to just grasp the concept that self is everything. No matter how you flip it, to put self in front of anything, it's going to be important. In order to love, you have to self-love first. In order to do anything for anyone else, you have to be in a space of understanding it for yourself first. To teach it, to exude it, to comfort someone, to do anything of the sort, you have to be able to understand. It has to be more than just empathetic. You have to have an understanding. And typically an understanding comes from experience. And within that is why I'm saying you have to figure out where the foundation is. So understanding what the words were spoken as a child in your foundation is key. And then understanding what you say about yourself is key, and then understanding that you have to believe what you are now saying. As always, thank you so much for joining me. I greatly appreciate you. I greatly appreciate you taking the time to listen to me. And I hope that self-sabotaging as a term becomes deeper than just the idea of you not liking yourself, right? Or you hating yourself. I really hope that you don't use hate for anything that has to do with you or anyone else, but definitely not that has to do with anything that has to do with you. So, as always, thank you so much for joining me. Before you can do any of the things that I'm asking, I would absolutely behoove for you to like this video, also to peruse the channel and check out some other videos, comment, share, hit the notification button, subscribe if you haven't, tell the masses about it, all those other cool things. And as always, before you can even get to that, I'm going to ask you to remind yourself to always do 3 things. That is, live life authentic. You're awesome. I appreciate you. And of course, I'll see you later in the week. Have a wonderful day. Bye.